Good morning and welcome to everyone. CARG, very quickly, is as Jeff said, Community Association Resource Group. We're a group of probably about a dozen specialties that cater specifically to associations. And we've vetted everyone. And then we have usually a monthly webinar on a different topic for education purposes. Today's webinar is going to be from Forever Gone. We have Darren and Ko speaking, and I'll introduce them shortly. Basically, COG is, like I said, just a consortium of various services. We've all been vetted, and we're here really for twofold. One, for education for the board members and also for the property managers. And we're offering really free advice during the webinar. You can give us a call during the month if you have any questions. We're more than glad just to speak to you and give you some guidance. Basically, that's it as far as COG. We will be taking questions. You can do it in two ways. You can go ahead and in the chat feature, you can go ahead and write down any questions and we'll read it out loud. If you would like to have a little interaction, you can raise your hand and we can have you speak directly to the panelists. With that said, I just wanted to just mention just a very short intro to our topic today, which is nasty bugs, critters, anything that's going to go in and infest, I guess, your living quarters and outside in the lawn. It was interesting. My daughter called up. I have a 8-year-old, and there was some type of bug or cockroach that was in the shower. And my daughter went ahead and said to my grandson, Evitt, do you want to go ahead and, get it and kill it? And, he went ahead and said yes. He took this tissue, went into the shower, bent down, took a look at it, and said, too many legs, and just ran out. So, the people that we have basically here, Darren is definitely not afraid of bugs or cockroaches or any other pest. So he's not going to run away from it. With that said, I'm going to turn it over really to Darren. And the presentation will probably last about an hour. As I say, any questions you have, please use the chat format and we'll take those. Darren, it's all yours.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Darren, and I'm the certified operator for Forever Gone Pest Control. I have licenses in lawn and ornamental and general household pest control. Today, we're going to mostly focus just on the lawn and ornamental side, which is fertilization of plants and plant pests. My background is I've been involved with landscaping. I owned a landscaping company for 20 years, from 2000 to 2020. So now I just focus on pest control with my partner, Ko, who's going to be speaking in a minute. But for all you property managers, I know what you go through during your walkthroughs. As Mark can attest to, typically landscaping is the biggest line item in the budget and generates the most complaints. So today we're going to keep it real simple, give you guys some basic tips. So when you do your walkthroughs or you get your phone calls, you'll have some general knowledge of how to take care of and maintain plants and grass.
All right. Thanks, Darren. My name is Ko, and I'm Darren's partner, part of the business also. My background is I've worked in agriculture for 15 years, mostly agricultural inputs, which really help with like the recommendations in the build and the services that we do today. And I spent a few years working actually in property management, so very similar to a lot of you guys. We directed, when we were building Forever Gone, we built a model that is geared towards HOA and COAs and commercial properties. We also have, you know, like 2,500 different residential accounts, but our most important clients, our biggest clients, and where we spend the most time on, and where we invest the most is HOAs. And so it's a real huge pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm going to project my screen. And just wanted to confirm, I think you guys can see the screen. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
So first thing, like, what are we doing today? Hopefully this is not a boring topic and not a boring, you know, class. We want to, as best as possible, give you guys a really good understanding of, you know, turf, plants, trees, pests, things like that that you find specifically in Florida. It changes dramatically. Like if you compare Orlando with South Florida, it's a different country. But we're gonna, you know, do our best. Learn to identify common issues. That's like Darren said, rightly so. 80% of our of property managers complaints from residents are weeds and then bugs and then weeds and then bugs again and then weeds and then maybe there's something else and then weeds come again. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to give you guys some suggestions on vendor management. Actually, we're putting together a whole course on vendor management, but we want to give you guys some pointers on honestly how to make us do a better job for you, like how to make sure we're on our toes and we're, you know, taking care of you guys the way we should. And we'll be talking about turf and grass identification, maintenance, pest and disease management, weed control, then vendor oversight. However, before all that, we want to break the ice a little bit. So I'm going to jump to a system called Kahoot. And I'm going to ask people in the audience to sign in. You don't have to put information. There's no credit card information. There's no address. There's no nothing. This is not, you know, for spamming. It's just for us to have, you know, a little bit of fun and have a little bit of a back and forth with you guys. So scan the QR code, start adding your names to the system. And we have a few questions for us to start before the class. I'll just give you guys some time to sign in. In our in-person courses, there's a ranking at the end, and whoever's at the top gets a prize. Here, I think getting a prize is a little bit harder, but if you guys do good enough, we'll think about what do we do.
Give a high five.
We can give you a virtual high five, yes. Just in case you guys need the big QR code again.
While everybody's doing that QR code, let me just introduce some of the other COG members to the audience. Basically, as I said, my name's Mark. I do condominium accounting, monthly accounting. We also have Popular Bank that does many, many loans and obviously holds all your money at good rates. We have a cable consultant that will advise you on cable and it won't cost you anything. It'll be paid basically by the provider. We have Maori Elevator, Andrew, who we're going to put into the lineup here very shortly. We have janitorial services from Professional Builders. They do janitorial and light maintenance. We have a landscaper who's on right now. That's Charles Infantino from GRC Services. We have a pool service that does repairs and new construction. That would be Hickson Pool. And we have Pallets Roofing that obviously does all your roofing needs. And then we also have DMI, which does paving for us. And we have a new member that's going to be joining us, which is Valley Insurance, which is always a hot topic for the last few years, just because all the costs have gone up dramatically. Kyle, I'm going to turn that back over to you.
Yeah. All right. Let me jump in. See, some people are coming in and out. I'm gonna just start the Kahoot and let's just see where we go. Um, so first question, jumping in. This is the best joke in the world. How many ants does it take to break the ice? Just one if it's fire enough. So let's start with what are the most frustrating? Oh, I see that you guys are, I don't think you guys are seeing the screen. All right, there you go. In one or two words, what's the most frustrating part of managing landscapes at your communities? Just type in the answers. And as you guys type in, they start popping up here.
Kyle, can you flash the code again? I think there's some people that probably want to sign up.
Oh, I'll do that in a little bit. So
Okay.
opinions, everyone, weeds, the bigger one, satisfying all the owners, quality job, nobody does that. Identifying plants and residences, that's perfect. Next one. I think, Mark, I'm gonna have to do this on the as soon as I do it next.
Okay.
So if landscaping issues had a personality, what would it be? Overdramatic neighbor, the silent troublemaker, the ex who won't start calling, or the kid who blames the dog? This is very interesting. The kid who blames the dog. Yeah, this is kind of this is also a lot of what we see day to day. Last one before we go in. How often do you check your irrigation timer schedule? Weekly, monthly, twice a year, or never? That's what we pay a landscaping company for. Pretty equal. All right. All right. So we will jump back to the presentation. All right, so let's go to turf and grass identification. Darren, I'll let you
Okay.
take it away.
If you thought those jokes were funny, I wrote them. If not, Kyle did. So there's the most common grass that you'll deal with down here is going to be on the top left, the St. Augustine grass. I would say 90% of your properties, homes, residential, will have St. Augustine. Just because of the, as you can see from the picture, it's very lush and green. That picture looks Photoshop, but it's actually real. To get St. Augustine to look that good, you'd have to have a balance of what we do, our services, fertilization, taking care of the pests, in combination with regulating the water. That St. Augustine is not under or overwatered. It's got the perfect amount of water. All the pests are under control, no fungus. Not always the case with St. Augustine. We'll go over a few of the issues that are associated with St. Augustine. On the top right is Bahia grass, which you very rarely see in front of homes. Um, if St. Augustine is a 7 out of 10 to maintain, Bahia grass would be a 2 or 3 out of 10. But it's just not as attractive as you can see from the picture. They grow seed heads and that need to be trimmed often. So not real pretty for a house or attractive. You see them more on the, you see Bahia more on this on the side of highways and in medians. And then the bottom left, you don't see it too often, is zoysia grass. Looks good, probably 8 out of 12 months out of the year. I know I like my grass to look good as much, 12 months out of the year. And I'm sure the associations do as well. So that's not really a practical or a good type of grass down here. The Bermuda grass on the bottom right is beautiful, the Rolls Royce of all grasses, but requires a lot of maintenance. You see them on golf courses. We've dealt with homeowners. We do have homeowners that do have it. It requires special mowers and fertilizer, so not recommended for HOAs or for homeowners. Again, the St. Augustine is the most practical. So there's several issues with St. Augustine. Almost all of them are treatable. We have an example of a couple here, which are the chinch bugs on the top left. If that property has a pest control company, they should be fired, because typically you see it as small irregular spots that just travel quickly and you can get it under control. But that side needs to be replaced because it wasn't controlled from the get-go. Gray leaf spot is something that you see on throughout the year. You'll see it a lot this time of the year with a lot of rain. So that needs to be treated often. Mosaic virus is something that hasn't traveled down south yet. It's in the Wellington, and I think it goes up to about Port St. Lucie. Not treatable. One of the few diseases that St. Augustine gets that's not treatable, but fortunately we don't have it down here. If you did get this, you would just cut out the area and have to do patchwork and replace it.
We have the same thing for like zoysia, Bahia grass, Bermuda grass. We're gonna skip that, but you guys are gonna get the presentation with the entire thing. Just honestly thinking that for the sake of time.
So yeah, this is just a basic, just gives you a breakdown of the requirements that the different grasses need. Again, the St. Augustine, which you're going to see most of, is they do have different varieties. They have a full sun variety and a shade variety. If you looked at both side to side, you'd never be able to tell the difference. But St. Augustine is flexible in the fact that you could get different varieties for shade or sun. The other ones are more, either full sun or shade for the most part. Okay. So one of the problems that we have that with associations is overwatering. So if as Kaya had mentioned, the wet checks are extremely important to do on a monthly basis to clear the any blocked heads and to adjust the timing. The timing chains, it's fluid throughout the year, so you need to check it regularly.
Yeah, just to complement something, like water issues are really I think a really good like 30 to 40% of everything that we get called for. And water issues, we've just to share an example, we've had a case of a property up in Juno Beach now, and they were having drainage issues. And so we just had incredibly heavy rain a couple weeks ago. When the rain started to go down, on the path the water took, uh, all the grass died because there were drainage issues, and they were trying to and they just soaked the water. The water stood there and it killed the grass. So uh, managing water, whether it's drainage, whether it's irrigation, it's a huge thing. And unfortunately, it changes week by week. If one week it stops raining, you got to turn it on. If 2 days after you turn it on, it starts raining, you got to turn it off. And if you don't have, landscapers and pest control companies, sometimes it's the same. Sometimes there's two that work together, actually working together and connecting and discussing the water management. You're gonna probably have a headache because you're gonna go to like the kid who blamed the dog right in the beginning. You're gonna see people pointing fingers and blaming each other when actually both of them should be managing this issue with you.
And just off of that, St. Augustine requires about 2 inches of water a week. So that doesn't factor in rain. So, and we get about 50 inches of rain a year. So you only need to supplement the watering with the irrigation a little bit. So just be mindful of overwatering because it's the worst thing for St. Augustine grass. Underwatering is easy to tell. The grass, the blades fold up and you can see it. So, it's pretty apparent. It's not as apparent when you overwater. But underwatering causes a lot of issues. It invites chinch bugs and other secondary problems. So overwatering and underwatering are just as important. It's always important to regulate your water.
So the second part of it is not second, but another part of it is talking about the fertilizer needs. So I don't know if everybody knows, but whenever you see a number like 1824.6 or 1208 or something like that, you're essentially talking about the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium in that fertilizer. These are the macronutrients. These are the nutrients that plants and shrubs and trees need in the biggest quantities. And then you have micronutrients, which are like manganese, boron, iron, et cetera, molybdenum, which are nutrients that the plants need in lower doses. Um, Fertilizer is, as everybody can expect, one of the most important things in making a community beautiful. Now, there are a few things that are incredibly important. I don't want to bore you with everything, although I love talking about this, but never fertilize turf that is stressed or that has fungus. If you fertilize turf that is dry, or turf that has active fungus, or turf that has a lot of weeds, either you're going to burn the grass, or the fungus is going to spread, or the weeds are going to spread. So you have to treat them first and then solve the problem and then fertilize. Otherwise, fertilizer that's going to the ground is going to go to waste. Uh, there is no one size fits all. You have, for example, if you just want the lawn to green up, they're healthy, but sometimes not as green as you want. You need iron applications, for example. Sometimes you need slow release fertilizer, but sometimes you need fast release. A lot of people are asking for slow release when sometimes a fast release is what they actually need. We do both in our fertilizer protocol, depending on what we see. And then there's an interesting oversight tip. Make sure that your vendor is BMP compliant and has a fertilizer license. Having the lawn and ornamental license is not enough to fertilize. And that's actually important because it's a misconception that not a lot of people know. So you might have people fertilizing that actually cannot legally fertilize. And honestly, that is probably 70% of the cases. Um, we look at fertilizer applications very differently. Turf, we usually fertilize about 4 times a year. Ornamental plants, 2 to 3 times a year, depending on what the protocol is. Trees, 2 to 4 times a year, and privacy hedges, 3 to 4 times a year. Um, we usually like to space them out so that we're every month fertilizing the properties, and we can address issues as we see them. But that's just something the whoever the vendor you guys have are or is should make sure that you have a protocol for each part of the community with different fertilizers. Um, in this part, this is something that we get a lot of calls about, and we have a lot of homeowners and HOAs asking us about. They want to use weed and feed. Weed and feed is crazy expensive. The cheapest bag you can find is $70, which is 6.5 times what, or 3.5 times what a regular fertilizer bag costs, and it is not effective. Weed and feed, if it's too hot, and I mean, we're in Florida, so right? It'll burn your grass. If there are too many weeds, the weed control won't work, and the fertilizer in it will fertilize the weeds and make the weeds grow. And if it's not watered properly, it's just sitting there and it might burn the grass and it might not actually take effect. Uh, when you're doing weed and feed, if you want to do weed control and you want to fertilize, you have to space them out at least 14 days. So you treat the weeds and then afterwards you come back and fertilize. Uh, Highly recommend not using weed and feed or not doing weed control and fertilizing on the same treatment.
Yeah, so what we do is we fertilize the whole lawn and then we come back with a backpack sprayer and then we target the actual weeds and that's a much more effective way than to just broadcast spray a poison that isn't necessary. So, it's better to target the weeds when you see them, when you pop up, in addition to regulating your water.
So going to pest and disease management, Darren, go ahead.
Okay, so brown patch fungus, you'll see that. I'm sure you guys have seen that in your walkthroughs or at your home. They're just perfect circles that Mother Nature somehow creates. They appear in the fall and the winter. And the reason you see those is because the grass goes dormant, in the fall and the winter. So you need very little water. So if you are overwatering, you will get this brown patch fungus in the fall and the winter. So that's just an indication that you're overwatering. As soon as you see that, just know that you need to regulate the water. The same thing with dollar spot, not as common down here, but just something you need to pay attention to as far as, adding a fungicide and having someone who knows how to identify what it is and know that it's, what's the difference between a fungus and an actual pest. So that's why, the professionals can distinguish the difference. Gray leaf on the bottom left, that's pretty much a disease or a fungus that the plant that exists all year. So we treat for that pretty much all year. And again, the mosaic virus, hopefully it'll stay where it is up north, but that's an incurable fungal disease.
Just a quick comment, like this morning we had a call. Actually, the call came 2 days ago and we were treating it, and the guy had called us and said, "Hey, I have my landscaper told me I have fungus in my plants, and I need to, it looks like it's traveling from my neighbor." And it didn't really, make a lot of sense, but we're like, all right, we're gonna go and check it out. And this morning I sent pictures to the homeowner and everything else. He has mealy bugs and he has caterpillars, no fungus. So just like Darren said, identifying these things is not really that easy. The same symptoms might be there, but it might be either a disease or a pest. And it's really important to make sure that you have a good company who knows what they're doing, who knows what the treatment protocol is for each thing.
Darren,
So, yeah,
Darren, there was a question over here that says, so if you have more weed than grass, what do you use?
so we usually use the rule of thumb of about 80. If it's 80% weeds, then what we would recommend is either we stay away from it or we leave it up to the resident or the association to take a chance and spray it and just be prepared to replace the sod if need be. But typically, if it's less than 80%, we can take care of the weeds and have the St. Augustine grow back and fill in. But again, the best way to be proactive about it is to regulate the water. So these are just common turf pests, mostly associated with St. Augustine. Chinch bugs, again, you'll see in the springtime when the grass is dry. army, sodworms all year. So a good program will help with that. Grubs are beneficial to a certain degree, but when you get too many, it could cause a problem. They call it pest control, not pest elimination. You don't want to get rid of every single pest that there is, because there are beneficial pests as well. Grubs, a few of those are beneficial, but when they get to the point where there's that many per square inch, then that's where it's a problem. We could go through all plant pests all day. There's so many of them. Just a general statement is to try to place plants that have the same water requirements next to each other, because a lot of these problems can be eliminated by overwatering. Here you see just the most common thrips and whitefly. If you have ficus, I'm sure you've seen or heard of those. Leaf miner affects a lot of citrus plants. Mealy bugs are very common in house plants. But again, you'd have to look at the symptoms and know what the issue is, know if it's a pest, a fungus, a deficiency. So, and some of these pests also can be targeted with insecticide, and some with horticultural oils and things like that. These are incurable diseases, Ganoderma and lethal bronzing. The difference between those two is the Ganoderma will kill very slowly. It's more concerning for palms. If you see it, the palm might have a few more years. If you need to remove it, you just excavate the soil, because it is a soil-borne fungus. On the right is lethal bronzing. It used to be a big problem. I think we've got it under control now. When you see it, it's very quick. It could either be a lightning strike or it's lethal bronzing. That's how quick it affects the palm. No cure for it, just has to be removed, and all the spores have to be taken out if you're going to replant something there.
Going quickly to topical versus systemic treatments, going to what Darren was saying about pest control. When you have an issue on a plant, let's just use a ficus hedge as an example. You have whitefly there right now. You need to foliar spray it right there. And that's what we call a topical treatment. So you're spraying the hedges and you're killing everything on contact. However, if your neighbor has whitefly, in 1 week, you're going to be full of whitefly again, because a topical treatment doesn't last that long. It lasts for maybe 3 to 5 days. That's it. And as soon as it rains, everything's out. Everything's off the hedges. You might use a product that makes it stick to the leaves for a little bit, but again, it never lasts for more than 3 to 5 days. So what you need to do, and I'm telling you this because I think that you should have your pest control company do this, is systemic treatment. If you spend a little bit more time, use a few different products, and you have an actual program, you can protect the hedges for 5 to 10 months, depending on the treatment and depending on the issue. And like the difference there is, if you, for example, have whitefly, instead of having you to go and spray and knock it down, the plant absorbs the insecticide, and as the whiteflies start to chew on the leaves, they chew the insecticide and they die, and so they don't even reproduce. Obviously, if you have a massive volume, you might still have to do the foliar or the topical spray, but it's night and day when you start using a systemic treatment, a long-term treatment, and you combine it with a really advanced nutritional protocol. We can show you guys pictures of absolutely stunning and beautiful hedges all throughout the properties that we treat, because we do the long-term treatment. So going to weed control.
So on the left, you'll see broadleaf weeds, and that's typically if you sign a contract with a landscaping company, and they include weed control in the lawn, it'll mention broadleaf weeds. But that does leave out the weeds on the right, which are also a problem. So in your contracts, you should ask for both types of weed control, broadleaf weeds and grassy weeds. The weed on the right is called goosegrass. You'll see those where there's compression. So a lot of times you'll see those in HOAs along driveways. I know at my house, I'm aware of those weeds, and where I park my car on the left side of my driveway, there's none. My wife isn't as aware of it, and she doesn't care. Parks on the right side, and we have like a beautiful goosegrass hedge where she parks the car on the right side. So you'll see a lot of those in HOAs along driveways, along where the pool company might go to the backyard. They're stepping on the grass and causing compaction. So those weeds can be addressed with a special herbicide that addresses grassy weeds. So again, in the contracts, you want to make sure that broadleaf and grassy weeds are both addressed.
And then last thing now, like contracts and vendor oversight. If there's anybody sleeping, is really the time to wake up. And if we like, this is the part where we're telling you guys how to get us to do our job right. Um, you might have two different types of FERT and pest services in terms of how do you contract them. They might be bundled with a landscaper, or you might have a dedicated pest control L&O company that works together with the landscaper. So if you have one contract, is a lot simple, right? It's one point of contact, but it's usually a secondary focus of the landscaper. It's not usually what they do. They're concerned about 1,000 other things. And as you guys know, pest control is usually 10 to 20% of the contract, but it's 80% of the complaints. So most people are just focusing on that 80% of the contract. If you have a dedicated vendor, you got to make sure it's a good vendor because you're probably paying them directly and you're paying them because of their expertise. Otherwise, you would just, go with the landscaper. The only thing that's important there is to make sure that you coordinate. So, regarding the pest and fertilization vendor, make sure there's inspection reports, make sure that they go by the property and send you the reports. Most of them are going to promise to do that and never do that. Add to the contract that they don't get paid if they don't send you the report or something like that. If they say no, just go for another one. You need to make sure that both of them are aligned. They understand on the irrigation flags, the pest control flags, the fertilization timing. They're going together. We have for landscape partners that we go and fertilize right when they're mowing so that it absorbs better, and their guys are there to blow off granular fertilizer from the pavers. Um, that's a synergistic relationship between two separate companies that work really well together. And just make sure to review the scope and make sure that there are no overlaps and you're not paying both vendors for the same thing.
Along that, we've partnered with landscaping companies midstream, and we've improved the properties because we've done these programs. And the landscaping company gets the credit, which we're okay with. But you can see that when you bring in a specialty company, it does make a big difference.
Exactly. Um, Suggestions to you guys, and again, we're going to send this to you, but you should ask your FERT and pest vendor, whether it's the landscaper or somebody else, hey, do you have L&O and fertilization licenses? And I can tell you right now, if you go and ask right now who you work with, for the most part, they only have the L&O and don't have the FERT. What's your policy for callbacks and retreats? Are they going to charge you stuff that's not in the contract and they underbid the contract just to get it? And then you actually have a bill that's 20% higher, or are they actually going to just treat it as part of the contract? How often do they inspect the property versus treat it? We were having a conversation with a property manager yesterday, and we were saying, hey, this is a report and this is what your community is. And we give you this report, 6 to 8 times a year. And they're like, what do you mean? This is not the proposal? It's like, no, this is the actual report you're going to get. If you talk to any of our property managers, some of them are here, they receive that report every month or two with the entirety of everything we did, what we're taking care of. How do you deal with the landscaper for irrigation and FERT? Do you coordinate? People are going to give you vague answers and non-answers. That's a red flag. If they don't have written logs, that's a red flag. If they're pushing you to, for new services that weren't in the contract, theoretically, let's say, technically, let's say, it's also a red flag. And people that start blaming each other, like, hey, Darren, you did this, and Kyle, you did that. Like, oh, it's the landscaper's fault. Like, that's a red flag. Those guys don't have your best interest at heart. And the last one is, specific recommendations when you're negotiating the contracts. Make sure that they have quarterly fertilization programs. Even if you don't have the budget to have them treat turf, shrubs, and trees 4 times a year, space out the treatments, because when you're fertilizing turf and you're putting granular down, there are benefits on that granular being put on the shrub beds and vice versa. So if you space them out, they're getting, even if it's like 1 or 2 real fertilizer treatments and 1 or 2 half fertilizer treatments, it's still a better strategy. Monthly IPM usually is only work order responses. We highly suggest you ask for preventative treatment. It's a lot cheaper, easier, and there's less chemical overload if you're preventing issues instead of just remediating issues. Uh, Most people say they use pre-emergence, but they don't because it's very hard to control. You might burn the grass. So actually what everybody does is post-emergent. But if you're properly treating it multiple times a year, you can keep weeds under control. It's not that hard. You just got to do what you say you're going to do. And again, I think you guys should push the vendor to actually do what they say in the contract. And if they don't, just fire them. That we say that all the time. Our contracts have a 30-day termination clause. We only want clients that are happy. If they're not happy, they can fire us. We stop charging them the same day they fire us. And we tell them like, hey, you need to be happy, so we need to be doing our job. If we're not, just find somebody else. And I think that, there are a couple of other recommendations. So at least 4 times a year weed control for the entire property. It is impossible, like Darren said on that picture with St. Augustine earlier, to effectively control it with 2 to 4 times a year. You cannot do that. You should add mechanisms for people not doing what they say they're going to do. So add a no-show penalty. If somebody tells you they're going to be there 12 times a year, but they're only there 8, they should only get paid for those 8, if they get paid at all. So add penalties, like push them to actually do what they need to do. And then I think you guys should request proactive reports of what's going on. Like these are basic things. You guys pay them a lot of money. A lot of these people make money and they pay their technicians enough. They need to do what they say they're going to do. So I'm going to jump back to Kahoot for a few last kind of questions uh, before we jump in. I wanted to see if I can try to move to the beginning where we had the just a second. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Wanted to see if I can move to the beginning where we had so that more people can sign up. All right, I'm gonna bring up the QR code again so that people can sign up. Give it a few more seconds and then get started. All right, I'm gonna jump in. Can you guys see my screen? I think so, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just gonna jump to, yeah, I'm gonna skip to the questions after you guys already asked them. The ones that we already asked, sorry. This last one. All right. First question at the end. How helpful is your landscaping committee? Incredibly helpful. They're true plant lovers. They mean well, but hit or miss depends on their coffee, and we don't have one and it's on purpose. Hit or miss, yeah. And a couple of people don't have them. All right, what does the N in NPK stand for? Nutrition, nitrate, nitrogen, or nectar? Nitrogen. Almost everybody got it right. Rocky's number one right now because he answered the fastest.
Virtual high five.
If your turf looks blue-gray and curls at the edges, it's likely overwatered, underwatered, sunburned, or just naturally dramatic. Underwatered is the answer. Rockies still are number one. Second virtual high five. What happens if you overwater your turf? Your HOA gets bonus mushrooms, your turf thrives, root rot and fungus can spread, or you risk letting the turf grow into a rock and mulch beds. Root rot and fungus can spread. Rocky, TR is right behind you, but let's go. What's the best time to water turf in Florida? 9 to 10 a.m., overnight, right before sunset, or early in the morning before sunrise? Early in the morning. It's the absolute best time to water. I know it's impossible because sometimes you guys have water zones and very big communities, but that's the very best time to do it.
Because of evaporation.
Yes. Which of these is a major risk of combining weed and feed treatments? The turf could turn blue, ants are attracted to the fertilizer, the turf can burn and fungus can spread, or irrigation valves can clog if not properly cared for. Turf can burn. And then I think we're at the last question now. When should you avoid fertilizing turf, even if it's on the calendar? During spring, after rainfall, during periods of drought, or during a board meeting?
Higher with that one.
All right, yes, during periods of drought and fungus activity. All right, so it looks like TR was number 3,
Here.
Jan was number 2, and Rocky, I'm assuming. Yes, sir, Rocky number 1. Virtual high five because we weren't in person to do like an award, but I promise you next time we will. All right, guys, that is the course. Appreciate everybody's times. If you guys have questions, we would love to take them.
All right. Well, before you address the questions in the Q&A, just want to mention, if you haven't already done so, please press the chat button, which is a different module from the Q&A, not to be confused. If you haven't already done so, do that now, and I will once again place the link for the required evaluation in that module in the chat area. When you click on that, a new tab in your browser will open up. You'll fill out the evaluation, submit it, and that's also how the gang over at Forever Gone will be able to collect your information, report your CEU credits, get your contact information, and send you the slides. So please do that. Gentlemen, back to you for the Q&A. Anybody? Hello? You guys gonna anything in the question Q&A, Mark?
No, we covered almost everything.
Okay.
We just got a lot of reviews saying that they loved the class and they thought it was very informative.
Well, I have one. I hear some of you saying cockroach and some of you saying cockroach. Which one is it? It's not caca, that's poop, right? It's just cockroach.
Yes.
It depends where you come from. If you come from New York,
I'm from New York too, but I never say cockroach.
I say cockroach.
Cockroach. Okay.
Yeah. That's how
I mean,
it's enunciated.
sounds funny, but that was a serious question because I hear it both being used. I just wanted to, I'm just curious.
It's interesting that that's our only question.
Well, I actually, all right. So when I'm not in Florida, I'm in the Birmingham, Alabama area, and we have a lot of the same insects because we're more of a subtropical climate, which is very close to what you have down there. And we see these scary looking flying palmetto bugs, right? Those are not roaches per se, and they're not bugs of filth. They're just looking for moisture, correct? I mean, because a lot of people confuse that and think that if you see a palmetto bug or a water bug or whatever you want to call them, doesn't mean you're dirty. Doesn't mean you have food laying around, correct?
There's not much you could do about flying insects like that, but
Okay.
like palmetto bugs. But yeah, they come from the outside and they're kind of just one-offs usually. You usually don't see palmetto bug infestations like you do cockroach infestations.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, the ones you got to worry about are when you see the smaller ones, right? Those are the ones
Crawlers,
where you,
yeah.
yeah.
The
Okay.
smaller ones are the German cockroaches that are inside. The
Okay.
outside are the American, the Australian. Those usually don't venture their way inside, but those are much bigger.
Okay. And something my granddaughter's always freaking out about, dragonflies. They're not gonna, if they land on you, they're not gonna bite you, and they actually serve a purpose, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
What are
Part
the
of the
purposes they
ecosystem.
serve so I can educate her? What do they do? They
A
eat
lot of
other.
them pollinate. Well, they might eat other bugs, but they might pollinate also. A lot of these, even mosquitoes, serve a purpose. And one of their purpose is to be a pain in the ass, but the other purpose is to actually be a pollinator of some sorts.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
also at the bottom of the food chain too.
What
Mosquitoes.
are they? Why are mosquitoes attracted to some people more than others? Does that have something to do with carbon dioxide being given off when you breathe? Like
Yes.
why are some more affected by them than others?
That's exactly right. A lot of how they get attracted and they're not incredibly visual. So they're attracted by CO2 density, and some people emit more CO2 than others. You know, when somebody's out of a workout or something like that, and you see them
Yep.
steaming, some people are in the workout with them and they're not. Different people have different body physiologies and different scents, and
Okay.
that might attract an insect or not based on that.
Although I will tell you, I get bitten up a lot, and I was always told that bugs go after sweet people.
There's always an exception, Mark.
Yeah.
That's what you got to understand.
I have a question for Darren.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Charles.
From time to time, we come across hardwoods that are infested with termites. Is there any treatment plan for termites in hardwoods, and how do you treat for them?
Yeah, they're either termites or they're also boring beetles, which requires a WDO license, which we do have. So we would just drill the tree and inject foam. Imidacloprid would be the
Is
active
there a possibility that we could save the tree after this treatment? And
by
is it only
injecting.
one treatment, or do you need several treatments?
One treatment should do it, and then we would seal it. And yeah, that would help. The tree must be dying anyway if it has termites, because
Yes,
termites are
yeah.
attracted to dead wood. So I would check to see why the tree is dying.
Okay.
Yeah. One interesting thing to say, Charles, is the only way of 100% guaranteed you get rid of drywood termites, and just now I'm talking about a structure or house, is tenting. You cannot guarantee to get rid of termites by spot treating. You can spot treat if the customer doesn't want to tent, because it's a hassle, it's pretty expensive, but you don't really guarantee that you're absolutely getting rid of it also.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because the tenting is gas, and gas can get into every single
Yes.
crevice and corner,
Mhm.
but it doesn't leave a residual. But it just kills everything. It'll even kill if you have rodents, rats, ants, every single possible thing tenting will kill. But you have to be very careful with the company you choose to tent, because it's a gas and it's dangerous, and sometimes they don't put the right amount in. There has to be, per cubic feet of house, you have to get a balance, an equilibrium. It's you have to have the right company. And spot treating is easier because if you have an apartment that's attached to another unit and they have it and the other doesn't, it's not practical to treat the whole building.
Okay. One more question, Darren. I ran across a client who had one branch on a limb that was decayed. If we took off the decayed branch, will the tree survive? Or do we have to remove the whole tree to prevent further decaying,
What you want to do is you want to cut the tree at the collar,
right?
because if you cut it at the collar, it'll heal. If you
Mhm.
do what's called a flush cut and you cut it closer to the tree and you don't leave that little collar, the decay will travel downward. But trees have the ability to compartmentalize issues. So if you cut it at the collar, it'll seal it off. If you ever see a tree that has like a circle with a hard, it's like hard around the circle, that's a chemical that is a result of compartmentalizing the disease so it doesn't spread down and cause the decay.
Thank you.
Mark, I've never seen anybody show their huge pickle on Zoom before. Let's see that handle again.
This was given to me by a good close attorney friend.
Interesting. Well, hey guys, let's say you service an entire association. Let's stick with a condominium building, a high rise, 15-story high rise. Does it help or hurt? So you service the public areas, the windows, the door frames, the whole 9 yards. If an individual does something on their own inside the unit, does it help or hurt what you've done? Can it help or can it hurt? Does it matter what they're using, what you're using? How does that all work?
Kyle, do you want to answer that or?
We prefer to be if we're servicing a fully managed community, we prefer to be the ones that are providing all of the chemicals. Because if you mix different chemicals, you screw up with their efficiency. So for example, we use, and I can tell you that nobody else does that, but we use acidity regulators in all of our mixing tanks.
Okay.
Because even though we pull water from a hydrant, which is the cleanest water possible, if it's too acidic or too alkaline, and you're doing weed control or fertilizing, each needs different levels of pH.
Okay.
And so if you're applying a fertilizer and you go and spray weed control on top of it, one of the two is not going to be effective because they're going to run into imbalances with acidity. See, just one example of like 20 other variables. So
Okay.
the best situation is if we apply everything. If the homeowner is still applying their own, it's important that they share with us what they did so that we can then pair it up. We've had cases where homeowners said, hey, I want to use a granular fertilizer. I love my yard, so I just want to apply it myself. So we go and we apply a liquid fertilizer on top of it to, boost the effectiveness of what they did.
Okay.
And then we let them know, we explain what they did. So it's better if we work in concert. There are many cases where they do something, they don't tell us, and sometimes the combination burns something. That happens. And, we just address it when it happens.
Jeff, I could give you an example of, because you may have been referring also to interior. So we put gel baits like where there's plumbing. So we don't use, like a homeowner could just use Raid and kill whatever they see. Well, the gel baits, we want the ants or the roaches to be alive so they could take the bait to the nest and move it around. So if a homeowner sprays Raid and we put the gel baits, there aren't going to be pests to move the baits around. So
that's great explanation. And that between the two of you, that was fantastic. And I know that question comes up a lot when you have bulk services and an individual doing something that could be counterproductive. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A from Sydney. Is there any work being done to find a treatment for sugarcane virus?
From what I know, yes, there is. Now, treatment in quotes is not exactly, it's not how typically plant viruses are handled. So, you have plant breeders that are trying to develop cultivars that are tolerant to it.
Okay.
And you have many types of different sugarcane viruses. You have sugarcane mosaic virus, sugarcane yellow leaf virus. You have a few others, and you're better off if you have varietals or cultivars that are resistant against it. There are really no virus killing treatments. That's very important. This also means that some of them are longer term solutions that you're only going to see in a few years. Now, the other thing that can be done, and just going back to like, what can we do right now? Because I know that I just gave an answer that is saying there's no solution, is control the vectors. So the same way that in lethal browsing, if you do a comprehensive pest prevention treatment plan, you don't eliminated, but lethal bronzing is carried on through leaf hoppers or plant hoppers, sorry. And if you control the population of insects, you reduce the probability of the plant getting sick. The same thing happens with a lot of sugarcane viruses. The sugarcane viruses, they spread by aphids or mealybugs, for example, which are very, very easy to control. And so if we're able to control these populations, then for sure we can control or at least reduce 95% the probability of getting a sugarcane virus. If you do get it, because again, there's an insect vector, if you do get it, then it's because your vendor is not doing a comprehensive treatment plan.
Okay. Okay. There's thank you for that. Very well explained. There's a question here, could be for Charles, could be for you guys, unsure. From Robert, pruning our crepe myrtles are always questioned if it should be lighter or on the heavier side. Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that. I have quite a few crepe myrtles at my home, and I usually do what we call hat racking. Usually at the end of the growing season before we go into winter months, where
Yeah.
we actually take off all the brown seed or the black seeds and maybe 2 feet, 3 feet, depending on the overall height of the crepe myrtle. And by doing so, it will come back thicker and flusher in the new year. So yes, I recommend that highly.
And crepe
Okay.
myrtles are deciduous, so they're gonna look kind of ugly for
Oh, they
like
will.
4 months and have no leaves too, so.
Yeah, so that would be a good time to do it when the tree is going into its
Exactly.
dormant season, to do a hard prune on it so that in the fall, come March, April, May, it'll just be blooming in color.
Yep.
But I do have one more thing I want to mention to you, Darren. A lot of associations are anti-chemical. Is there any organic type of fertilizer or pest control liquids that are safe to the environment for pets, people, and so on?
Synthetic,
Morganite comes to my mind.
Good question.
organic fertile, there's really not as effective as the synthetic, unfortunately, but if, there's ways to apply these chemicals without broadcasting them and using something called integrated pest management where you use them to a limited degree. But there are Milorganite is a good organic fertilizer. You could get it at Home Depot. But as far as the chemicals go and the insecticides, I don't think there's any real good organic products that I know of.
The only
Insecticidal soap will work if you have, on certain plants but for the most part, you want to use an insecticide, but use it carefully and sparingly.
Yeah, just a compliment. One of the things that Darren also always pushes for us to do when we're treating a house that has that concern is we use neem oil, and it's a much more natural product, Now, while you don't have uh, organic biological fertilizers, you have organic biological stimulants that you can use. And so what we've done in our fertilization protocol is you can reduce the amount of synthetic chemicals by using special biological products that make the trees or the shrubs or the turf absorb more nutrients with less granular. So again, going to what Darren said, there's no organic fertilizer, let's say, that's as effective as a synthetic, but there are strategies you could use, adding more products where you reduce the amount of fertilizer you use, but you increase the efficacy of the treatment.
You could
And
also
those
use
are natural biological.
controls. You could order in the mail ladybugs and beneficial pests too. So there are ways, but it's just, takes a little bit more time, and the process is not as quick as the insecticides.
One more comment to you, Darren, is do you ever use landscape sand, and in what applications do you use it and why?
I don't recommend sand if you don't need it, because our sand down here our soil is very sandy by nature, and there's a lot of limestone. So sand can help, but it depends on, the pH, and it depends on certain other factors. But it's iffy, it's questionable. I would have somebody look at the lawn first just to make sure. But again, if you live out west, so you have a lot of limestone and your soil is very sandy by nature. So you're just adding more sand on top of sand. So that's something to consider. The type of soil that you already have.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's see. We have our last question here, and then we'll let Mark take over to give the parting words for everybody. Robert is following up. So with everything said earlier, it's best to prune in the wintertime, Charles?
It depends on the tree, but you know, you want to prune before you go into the growing season or the rainy season. It just depends on the type of tree or what you're looking to prune and when.
Talking about the crepes from earlier, the crepe myrtles.
The crepe
Crepe
myrtle?
myrtles that he brought up earlier.
Okay. Well, actually, I use Forever Gone, and they generally have me on a program. And Darren, how often do you do the crepe myrtles at my house? Is it
We drench them about 3 times a year.
okay?
And as far as pruning, since they do best in spring, I would imagine November
Mhm.
would be a good time to prune them.
Great.
Okay. Mark, back to you. Take on over, my man.
Righty. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Each month, CARG goes ahead and puts on a informational and educational webinar. So, constantly go back to our website, which is cargforhelp.org. That's CARG, the number 4, help, HELP.org. And we will give you updates on that. And obviously, we'll be blasting out, the webinar schedules. I want to go ahead and thank Forever Gone. They took a nasty topic of bugs and pests and all, and they made it as entertaining as possible. I actually like the interactive with the audience. I think we have to do that more often. With that said, if you have any questions whatsoever, either for Forever Gone or for Charles at GRC Landscaping, myself, any accounting, I know budget season's coming up. More than happy just to talk to you. There's no cost or obligation. We can go ahead and give you some guidance and some thoughts on any of the questions that you may have. And anything else that any of our other members have, please reach out to us and we'll get back to you with some answers and we'll chat.
Mark, do you mind if I just make an offer also? Just
Yes.
similar to what you offered. We're happy to, we talked about inspection reports proactively about checking how the HOA looks and everything like that. We're happy to do complimentary inspection reports, no strings attached. We'll come by, we'll take a look, we'll see what our opinion is. We'll share with you what we could do to enhance the property if it's in need of enhancement. And it's absolutely complimentary. You can take the report and use it with your existing vendor. No problem at all. So just an offer also if somebody wants us to do that. We love doing that and hopefully worst case scenario gets you to, know some of the issues that are happening in the community.
No, I will tell you, I can vouch for that because several clients have asked you guys to come out. You've come out, there's no pressure, there's no obligation. And it's really more of just an educational type of informative chat.
Yep.
And that's really all of our other members are willing to do that.
Absolutely. And Mark, I just want to give a shout out to everybody for making these complimentary programs possible. We have a consult, Popular Association Banking, Community Cable Consultants, Maury Elevator, Professional Building Services. We have Charles here from GRC Landscaping Services, DMI Paving and Seal Coating, Forever Gone, of course, our experts presentation today, Hickson Pools, Palette's Roofing, and we have some others coming soon, as Charles mentioned earlier. So a big shout out, a big thank you to everybody for making these programs possible.